Sandra and I were sitting on the couch one evening, her laptop open on the coffee table as she scrolled through old college photos. She pointed out familiar faces, laughing as she recounted stories about her friends. "That's Andrew," she said, tapping the screen. "He and Jennifer will be there. Oh, and Carlos, you'll like him. He runs this big charity event every year." I nodded, trying to keep track of the names. "Sounds like a fun group. I'll finally get to meet the people you always talk about." She smiled. "Yeah, I think you'll have a good time." The trip seemed like a great idea, a break from routine, and a chance to explore a new city together. I even bought new hiking boots after Sandra suggested we check out some trails. She was genuinely excited about the whole thing, until about 10 days before we were supposed to leave. That evening, she sat across from me at the dinner table, picking at her food. "So, there's been a change in plans," she said carefully. "The reunion organizers decided to make it alumni only. No spouses or tag-along. Something about venue capacity." I frowned. "Wait, so no spouses at all?" "Yeah," she sighed. "I'm really sorry. I was looking forward to you coming, but they said it just wouldn't work." I leaned back in my chair, processing. "That's weird. Everyone was bringing their partners before. Did they just announce this?" She nodded. "Yeah, they just finalized everything. Andrew's wife can't come either, and a few others." Huh. It felt odd, but I didn't push. "Well, I guess I'll get some projects done at home." She smiled, relieved. "Yes, see? Silver lining." But over the next few days, I started noticing little things. Every time I asked more details about the trip, who else was uninvited, where exactly the events were being held, she'd quickly change the subject. It felt off. The night before she left, she packed while I lounged on the bed watching TV. I glanced over, noticing how carefully she folded each item, how she lingered over certain choices. "You're bringing a lot for a 4-day trip," I commented. She smiled, adjusting a dress on a hanger. "I just want to look nice in photos. You know, everyone's going to be comparing how much we've all changed." I watched as she slipped in a dress she had recently bought but hadn't worn yet. It was one of her nicest ones. "You're bringing that one?" I asked. "Yeah, why not?" She shrugged. "It's a special occasion." Her makeup bag was next, more than she usually packed for a weekend trip. She carefully arranged her toiletries, making sure everything was just right. The morning after Sandra left, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Andrew. "Andrew. Hey man, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I feel like you should know. Sandra has been spending all her time with Steven. They even went into his cabin together yesterday while everyone else was out hiking. They were in there for over an hour." My stomach dropped, but I continued reading. "She told everyone you couldn't come because of a work project. Also, there's no rule about partners. Here's the reunion schedule." A photo followed. I zoomed in, scanning it carefully. Nowhere did it mention that spouses weren't allowed. I just sat there, staring at my phone, trying to make sense of it. Sandra and I weren't having problems. In fact, things had been good, really good. We were planning for the future, talking about starting a family, looking at bigger houses in family-friendly neighborhoods. And now this. For almost an hour, I just sat there, replaying everything in my head. The way she had rushed through her explanation about the venue's capacity issues. The way she avoided my questions about other spouses. The extra effort she had put into packing. That evening, I called her. She picked up after a couple of rings. "Hey, babe," she said, sounding cheerful. "How's your weekend going?" "Not bad," I said evenly. "How's the reunion?" "It's great. We had a hike earlier, then a barbecue. It's been so nice catching up with everyone." I took a breath. "So, was the no spouses rule worth it? I mean, with how the venue worked out." There was the briefest pause before she replied, "Yeah, definitely. It's been really crowded. Not enough rooms for everyone, so it made sense." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Oh, makes sense. Hey, by the way, is Steven there?" Silence. Just for a second. But long enough. "Oh, no, he couldn't make it," she said, a little too quickly. "He's living in Europe now, actually. Moved there a while back." "Really?" I said, keeping my voice light. "I thought he was still in the US." "Nope," she said. "Last I heard, he's in London." I let the conversation drift to safer topics after that, then ended the call. My hands were shaking. I pulled up our cell phone bill online, scrolling through the list of recent calls. A number I didn't recognize kept appearing, more and more frequently in the past few weeks. The most recent call had been the day before she left. 47 minutes long. I copied the number and sent a quick text to Andrew. "Me. Do you recognize this number?" A few minutes later, his response came. "Andrew, yeah, that's Steven's number." Another message followed immediately. "Andrew. And by the way, he didn't move to Europe. He moved back 6 months ago." Then the final blow. "Andrew, he got divorced." I threw my bag in the trunk and drove straight to my sister's house. She opened the door, immediately sensing something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, stepping aside to let me in. I sat down at her kitchen table and handed her my phone. "Read this," I said, rubbing my temples. She scrolled through Andrew's messages, her expression tightening as she went. When she got to the photo of the reunion schedule, she set the phone down and exhaled. "Okay, that's concerning," she admitted. "She lied." "Liz," I said, shaking my head. "Not just about the spouses thing. She told me Stephen wasn't even there. And according to Andrew, she's been spending all her time with him." Liz frowned, folding her arms. "I get why you're upset. But before you jump to conclusions, you need to talk to Sandra. 7 years of marriage deserve more than 3 days of suspicion." I clenched my jaw. "So I should just ignore that she's been sneaking around with her ex?" "No," she said. "But maybe there's an explanation that isn't what you think. The calls could be innocent." I scoffed. 47 minutes the night before she left? Liz sighed. "I'm just saying, confront her when she gets back. Get the whole story before making any drastic decisions." I nodded, but the pit in my stomach remained. I stayed at Liz's place for the next 3 nights, sleeping on her couch. Sandra didn't call me again after our initial conversation. She sent a few generic texts. "Had a great hike today. Group dinner was fun, but nothing personal. No miss you or wish you were here." The photos she sent were always of big groups. Never just her. Never anything that showed what she was actually doing. So I checked social media. It didn't take long. I found pictures posted by other attendees. In 3 of them, Sandra was with Stephen. In one, he had his hand on her lower back. In another, they were sitting apart from the main group, deep in conversation. I stared at the images, my chest tightening. By the time Sandra's flight was due to land, I knew what I had to do. I went home, printed out the phone records, the reunion schedule, and screenshots of the photos. I laid them out on the kitchen table and sat down to wait. The front door opened. Sandra walked in, suitcase rolling behind her, a small smile on her lips, until she saw me. She stopped mid-step. Her eyes flicked to the table, taking in the papers. Her smile vanished. Concern replaced it. "What's all this?" she asked, setting her bag down. I took a slow breath. "We need to talk." She hesitated but stepped closer. "About what?" I tapped the printed-out reunion schedule. "You said spouses weren't allowed." "That wasn't true." Her mouth opened slightly. I slid the phone records forward. "You said Stephen wasn't there. But you've been calling and texting him for weeks. The night before you left, you were on the phone with him for almost an hour." She looked at the paper, then at me. "Charles, I pushed the screenshots toward her. "And here's you and Stephen. At the reunion you told me he wasn't at." She inhaled sharply, her face paling. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she swallowed. "Okay," she said softly. "Yes, Stephen was there." I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "And?" She glanced down, fidgeting with her hands. "We're just friends now." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Friends? You lied to me. Multiple times." She squeezed her eyes shut. "I didn't think you'd understand." "Understand what?" I asked, my voice tight. She took a shaky breath. "The organizers didn't actually ban spouses," she admitted. "I didn't tell you about Stephen being there because I didn't want to make things weird. I was trying to avoid an uncomfortable situation for everyone." I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "Uncomfortable for who exactly?" I tapped the printed phone records still lying on the table. "This wasn't just about him being there. 47 minutes the night before you left, Sandra? That's not a quick check-in." Her eyes flickered over the papers before she lifted her chin. "You went through my phone records?" she said sharply. "That's invasive, Charles." I scoffed. "You're deflecting." "Stephen was nervous about seeing people after his divorce, and he just happened to call you for almost an hour the night before? That was the 12th call between you two in 3 weeks. Don't act like this was a one-time thing." Sandra exhaled sharply and ran a hand through her hair. "I was just being a friend," she said, her voice more subdued now. "He's going through a rough time, and I was there for him. That's it." I clenched my jaw. "So you lied to me?" "Repeatedly. Because you were just being a friend?" Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came out. Finally, she swallowed hard. "We only went to his cabin to grab something from his car," she said. "Andrew must have left for the hike before he saw us come back out." I crossed my arms. "And you paid for most of his meals? Because he's between jobs?" She hesitated. He's struggling. I was just helping." I grabbed my phone and pulled up one of the reunion photos I found online. I turned the screen toward her, showing the one where Stephen's hand rested firmly on her lower back. "And this? How do you explain this?" Sandra barely glanced at it before waving her hand. "Oh, come on, Charles. It's a crowded group picture. People were squeezed together." I zoomed in. "Really?" "Because there's space around both of you. No one else is even that close." She sighed heavily, rubbing her forehead. "I can't believe this," she muttered. "You're making a huge deal out of nothing." I didn't say anything for a long moment. My mind was a whirlwind, every part of me trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Then, quietly, I said, "I'll be staying at my sister's tonight." Sandra's head snapped up. What? I turned and walked toward the bedroom to grab an overnight bag. Sandra followed close behind, her voice rising in urgency. Charles, please. You're overreacting to nothing. This is ridiculous. I didn't respond. I just pulled open drawers, grabbing clothes at random and stuffing them into my bag. Sandra's voice broke as she tried again. You're ready to throw away 7 years of marriage over harmless texts and some photos. Charles, we have a life together. We were planning for kids. For a new house. I zipped up my bag and turned to leave, but she stepped in front of the door, blocking my way. Please, she whispered. Don't go like this. Just stay and talk to me. We can work this out. I looked at her, at the desperation in her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly. But all I could feel was the weight of her lies pressing down on me. I didn't say another word. I just waited. Finally, after a long, tense moment, she stepped aside. I walked past her, out the door, and didn't look back. That night, she called me 27 times. 14 voicemails. I didn't listen to most of them. The ones I did hear ranged from teary apologies to furious accusations that I was being unreasonable. The texts didn't stop. Over the next few days, they came in waves, pleading, explaining, then blaming. My sister agreed to hold off on any legal steps while I figured out what to do. And that's the thing. I don't know what to do. 7 years of marriage, and I never saw this coming. My head won't stop spinning, trying to make sense of it all. Half my friends say I should hear her out, that marriages have survived worse. The other half say the lying alone tells me everything I need to know. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I don't even recognize my life right now. 2 weeks later, I had made up my mind about divorcing Sandra. I met Andrew at a small cafe near his office, my stomach in knots. He looked uncomfortable, like he wished he weren't the one telling me all of this, but I appreciated his honesty. I'm really sorry, Charles, Andrew said, setting his phone on the table and scrolling through his camera roll. I know this isn't easy, but I thought you deserved to know everything. He turned his phone toward me. The screen showed a group photo from the first night's dinner. I scanned the image, my eyes landing on Sandra. She was sitting next to Stephen, leaning toward him slightly, smiling in a way that made my chest tighten. Andrew tapped the screen. They assigned seats alphabetically, so Sandra should have been down here. He pointed to another spot at the table, but she switched her card to sit next to him instead. I clenched my jaw. She never mentioned that. Andrew exhaled sharply. I didn't want to get involved, but when I saw them together all weekend, it felt off. My wife noticed it too. I looked at him, searching his face. What exactly did you see? They sat together at every meal, every group activity, he explained. They were always talking, laughing, like no one else was in the room. People joked about how they just picked up right where they left off in college. I swallowed the lump in my throat. And the hike? Andrew hesitated, then nodded. That's what really made me decide to tell you. The hike was supposed to be 90 minutes through the park trail. About 15 minutes in, Sandra and Stephen left, saying they forgot something at the cabins and would catch up. He paused, watching my reaction. I said nothing, waiting for the rest. They never caught up, Andrew continued. They weren't there when we finished the hike, and they missed lunch completely. They didn't come back until about 30 minutes after everyone had already eaten. She told me they only stepped away for a few minutes. Andrew gave me a knowing look. That's not true, Charles. They were gone for at least 2 hours. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing a hand over my face, feeling exhausted. She said she didn't lie. I muttered, more to myself than to him. Andrew sighed. I've been in a situation like this before. My wife and I, we worked through it, but only because everything came out immediately. Secrets destroy marriages faster than mistakes. I let out a bitter laugh. That's the problem, Andrew. I don't think she was ever planning to tell me anything at all. 2 days later, I decided to meet Sandra. I arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes before our scheduled time, only to find Sandra already there, sitting at a corner table. She had ordered my usual drink, a small gesture that once would have felt thoughtful, but now felt calculated. Hey, she said softly as I sat down. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying. I didn't respond immediately, just exhaled slowly and looked at the folder she had placed between us. What's this? Sandra pushed it toward me. Photos from the reunion. Group shots, people all around. Look. I opened the folder and flipped through the pictures. Most were from the planned activities, dinners, boat rides, group hikes. She pointed out where Stephen appeared, always among others, never alone with her in these pictures. These don't prove anything, Sandra, I said, setting the photos down. They only show what everyone else saw. She folded her hands together tightly. They show I wasn't sneaking around. You're choosing to believe Andrew, who's always had issues with my friendships. You remember his behavior at our wedding? How he sulked because I danced with some of my guy friends. I shook my head. This isn't about Andrew, and you know it. It's about you lying, about Stephen being there, about not inviting me, about the hike, about everything. Sandra swallowed, looking away for a moment. I made a mistake, okay? I handled it wrong. I should have told you up front. But that doesn't mean anything happened with Steven. I leaned forward, my voice steady but firm. You didn't just handle it wrong. You actively made sure I wouldn't be there. You lied about who was coming. You lied about that phone call. You even switched your damn seat to sit next to him. She flinched slightly, but recovered quickly. Because I knew how you'd react, she said, her voice rising. You would have made it into something it wasn't. I just wanted to see my friends and not deal with accusations. I scoffed. Then why disappear with him for hours? Why say it was only a few minutes when it wasn't? Sandra's hands gripped the edge of the table. I don't know, she stammered. I didn't think it was important. I sat back, letting her words hang in the air. Not important, I repeated. She shook her head quickly. I mean, I wasn't trying to deceive you. I just didn't want an unnecessary fight. Lying to avoid a fight is still lying. Sandra, I said, my voice heavy with exhaustion. And the worst part? If Andrew hadn't told me, you never would have. Sandra's eyes glistened with fresh tears. I don't want to lose you over this, she whispered. I love you, Charles. 7 years. We don't just throw that away over a misunderstanding. This wasn't a misunderstanding, I replied. It was a choice. Repeated choices. She reached into her bag and pulled out another paper, sliding it across the table. I scheduled us for marriage counseling, she said, her voice trembling. A preliminary session next week. I stared at the paper, my heart heavy with everything I'd already decided. I exhaled slowly, keeping my hands flat on the table. I'm not going to counseling, Sandra. Her face twisted in frustration. So that's it. You've just made up your mind without even trying? She flipped through her folder again, pulling out more photos. Look at these. Look at how many people were around us all the time. Does that look like some secret affair to you? I barely glanced at them. Sandra, I don't need to see any more pictures of group dinners. Those don't change the fact that you lied to me. She leaned forward. Then talk to someone else from the reunion. Here. She scribbled 2 names on a napkin and slid it toward me. They'll tell you Andrew is exaggerating. I shook my head and pushed the napkin back. I'm done, Sandra. Her hands clenched into fists on the table. You're throwing away our marriage over a misunderstanding. No, I said firmly. I'm leaving because I can't trust you anymore. She stared at me for a long moment, then looked away, blinking rapidly. You're making a mistake, she muttered. Maybe, but it was a mistake I could live with. The next day, I started looking for apartments. I found a small one near my workplace. Nothing fancy, but enough. I signed a 6-month lease, paid the deposit and first month's rent from my personal account, and felt a strange sense of relief knowing it was separate from anything Sandra and I had shared. That evening, I told her, "You're moving out?" She repeated, her voice shaking. I nodded. I've already signed the lease. Her face turned pale, and then she reached for her phone. I need to call my parents. An hour later, her parents arrived. Her mother's eyes were already red, as if she'd been crying before she even stepped through the door. Her father, ever the composed one, cleared his throat and gestured for us all to sit. Charles, he started, every marriage has rough patches. You can't just walk away the first time things get hard. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted. This isn't just a rough patch. Sandra lied to me, deliberately, repeatedly. Her mother sniffled, dabbing at her eyes. But you love each other, she whispered. Isn't that worth fighting for? I didn't answer right away. Her father sighed. Look, son, I've made mistakes in my marriage too. Things I regret. But my wife forgave me, and we moved past them. He glanced at Sandra. That's what marriage is, choosing to work through things instead of running away. I stared at him. Did my mother-in-law lie to you and manipulate you for weeks before you worked through it? Silence. He looked away first. I stood. I'm not staying, and I'm not going to counseling. This is done. Sandra's mother broke into full sobs. Sandra just sat there, staring at the floor. That weekend, I packed my things. 2 friends helped me move while Sandra was at her parents' house. I left a note on the kitchen counter listing what I had taken and what I'd come back for later. No long explanations. No pleas. Just facts. A few days later, people started reaching out. Mutual friends, trying to piece things together. Apparently, Sandra had begun telling her version of the story, painting me as irrational and Andrew as a troublemaker. She says you're overreacting, one friend texted. That you're just jealous and won't listen to reason. I ignored it. My sister filed the divorce paperwork under irreconcilable differences. Then came Sandra's messages. I still hope you'll change your mind before it's too late. I didn't respond. A day later, she emailed me a list of marriage counselors, complete with links to their websites. She wrote that she had carefully researched their credentials and even found one specializing in rebuilding trust. I didn't open the links. A month had passed, and the divorce was moving forward, albeit slower than I had hoped. Sandra contested it, arguing that irreconcilable differences wasn't a valid reason given the circumstances. My sister wasn't surprised. She's stalling, she said over the phone one evening. It won't change anything. Our state is no fault. Her objections are just a delay tactic. And delay she did. Sandra filed a lengthy response to the divorce petition, demanding that we attempt marriage counseling first. She claimed the marriage could be salvaged, bouncing between apologetic messages and furious accusations. Then she started showing up. The first time, she arrived at my apartment unannounced, holding a bouquet of flowers. I just want to talk, she said, giving me a weak smile as I opened the door. I kept my stance firm. Sandra, you need to leave. Please, Charles. We've been together for 7 years. Can we at least sit down for a few minutes? No. Her smile wavered. You don't have to decide anything right now. I already have decided. Her hands tightened around the bouquet. For a second, I thought she might throw them at me, but instead, she turned and walked away. The second time, she wasn't so easy to get rid of. She showed up with a folder of divorce papers covered in handwritten notes, contesting various terms. This is not fair, she said, stepping past me into the hallway. You're punishing me for something that didn't even happen. I crossed my arms. Sandra, leave. She stood her ground. No, not until you listen. My neighbor, Mr. Patel, poked his head out of his door, taking in the scene with a raised eyebrow. Everything all right here? I exhaled. Sandra was just leaving. Sandra glared at him, then turned back to me. You really won't even try to save this? No, I said. Now leave. She muttered something under her breath and stormed off. After that, I had the building manager instructed not to let her in anymore. Sandra didn't stop there. She reached out to my sister, trying to convince her to stop representing me. My sister forwarded me the emails without comment. Long messages where Sandra claimed I was acting irrationally and didn't really want the divorce. Then mutual friends started reaching out. 2 of them, Ben and Alicia, called me separately. Hey, man, Ben started, his voice careful. I heard about everything. Sandra's really upset. Are you sure this is what you want? I closed my eyes. Ben, you don't know the whole story. She said you're shutting her out. She lied to me, manipulated me, and made sure I wasn't at that reunion while her ex was. I said, my patience wearing thin. This isn't something I'm going to change my mind about. He hesitated. She made it sound like, I don't know, like things just got out of hand. I let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, they did, because she put them there. Alicia's call went the same way. They clearly had only heard Sandra's version, and I didn't have the energy to set the record straight. Then last week, I ran into Jamie. I barely recognized him at first. We had met at my wedding. He was one of Stephen's friends, but I hadn't seen him since. Charles, he said, stopping mid-aisle at the grocery store. I nodded. Hey, Jamie, right? Yeah. He gave me a polite smile. How's married life treating you? My stomach tightened. It's ending. Jamie frowned. Oh man. I'm sorry. I hesitated, then decided to test the waters. You heard about Sandra and Stephen at the reunion? His expression shifted into something uncertain. What exactly did you hear? I frowned. That they were alone together a lot. That thing seemed off. Jamie exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, I don't want to stir the pot, but... He hesitated. Stephen told me Sandra was all over him that weekend. My blood ran cold. What? Jamie nodded, glancing around before lowering his voice. Yeah, he said Sandra told him you two were having problems and that your marriage was probably over. She was, persistent. I felt my hands clench into fists at my sides. And Jamie sighed. And they hooked up. Last night of the reunion. The words hit me like a brick. Hooked up? I repeated, my voice hollow. Jamie winced. Stephen specifically said they slept together. For a moment, I just stood there, my brain refusing to process it. My voice failed me. I see. I'm really sorry, man, Jamie said sincerely. I thought you knew. Stephen mentioned feeling bad about it afterward. Said he knew you from the wedding, but Sandra convinced him your marriage was already done. I swallowed hard. Did he show you anything? Proof? Jamie nodded. Yeah, he showed me texts from her. Pretty, explicit ones. I closed my eyes. This was it. Confirmation. I barely muttered a thanks before abandoning my shopping and walking straight to my car. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called my sister. She picked up after one ring. Hey, what's up? I exhaled sharply. I just ran into one of Stephen's friends. He said Sandra and Stephen definitely slept together. Silence. Then he admitted it? Yeah. I gritted my teeth. Jamie told me Stephen said she pursued him. That she said our marriage was over. He even showed Jamie text messages. She let out a slow breath. Okay, listen to me, Charles. Do not confront her about this. What? Why the hell not? Because she's contesting the divorce, she said. If we have evidence of adultery, that changes things. Let me handle this. I flexed my fingers against the steering wheel. So what do I do? For now? Nothing. And before you respond to anything Sandra sends you, forward it to me first. I ran a hand over my face. Fine. Good. She hesitated. I know this sucks, but trust me, we'll use this the right way. I hung up, staring blankly at the dashboard. I had wanted the truth. Now I had it, and it was so much worse than I had imagined. That evening, Sandra showed up at my apartment unannounced after a neighbor let her into the building. I opened the door to find her standing there, holding a takeout bag from my favorite restaurant. I brought dinner, she said with a hopeful smile. Can we talk? I hesitated, but eventually stepped aside, allowing her in. She set the food down on the counter and turned to face me. For nearly an hour, she repeated the same explanations I had already heard. Charles, I swear, I was just helping a friend. Nothing happened. Andrew completely misunderstood the situation. She looked at me, pleading. I love you. I would never cheat on you. She mentioned starting therapy, claiming she wanted to understand why she had handled things so poorly. I know I made mistakes, and I want to fix them. That's why I think couples counseling could really help us. She went on, bringing up our plans for children, how we had always talked about growing old together. Through it all, I remained silent, Jamie's words from earlier that day playing over and over in my head. When she finally stopped speaking, I did exactly what my sister told me not to do. I told her about my conversation with Jamie. Her entire expression shifted the moment Stephen's name left my mouth. That's a lie, she snapped. Jamie is lying to you. I folded my arms. He said Stephen told him you slept together at the reunion. Her nostrils flared. Stephen would never say that, she insisted. Why would he? It's not true. So Jamie just made it up? Sandra exhaled sharply, running a hand through her hair. Stephen probably told Jamie to lie. Maybe he's upset because I stopped talking to him after the reunion. I realized our friendship wasn't worth risking my marriage, so I cut him off. Maybe this is his way of getting back at me. I studied her. You never mentioned that you kept talking to Stephen after the reunion. She stiffened. Because it wasn't a big deal. Then why'd you stop? She crossed her arms. Because I knew you'd react like this. I scoffed. That's convenient. She grabbed her things. You're just looking for reasons to end this marriage, she accused. You'd rather believe a stranger over your own wife. Before I could respond, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The next day, I woke up to a long email from Sandra. She claimed she had spoken to Stephen and that he denied ever telling Jamie anything about hooking up. According to her, it was all a misunderstanding or deliberate sabotage. A week later, my phone rang. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening as I saw the name. Stephen. I let it ring twice before answering. Yeah? A heavy sigh came through the line. Charles, man, I need this drama to stop. I gritted my teeth. Then maybe you shouldn't have told Jamie you slept with my wife. There was a long pause. Then, I exaggerated when I was talking to Jamie. I gripped the phone tighter. Exaggerated? Look, Sandra and I spent time together at the reunion, yeah. But we didn't sleep together. I closed my eyes, trying to keep my voice steady. Then what had happened? Another pause. Then, in a quieter voice, he said, we kissed. I felt like the air had been sucked from the room. When? The final night. After we'd both been drinking at the farewell dinner. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears. And that's all. Yeah, Stephen said quickly. That's all. But, man, she told me your marriage was rocky. That you guys weren't connecting. That she was confused about what she wanted. I scoffed. Funny. Because we were planning to have a baby next year. There was silence on the line. Then Stephen let out a breath. Shit. I didn't know that. Yeah, well, maybe you should have kept your distance regardless, I snapped. She was married. You knew that. I know, he admitted. And I'm sorry. I should have backed off. But she was the one seeking me out. She suggested we catch up privately. She initiated most of it. I let his words sink in, feeling the sting of betrayal deepen. Sandra had painted our marriage as something it wasn't, not just to herself, but to other people, to justify what she did. Charles, I'm sorry, Stephen repeated, for my part in this. I didn't answer right away. Finally, I said, I'll handle it. And I hung up. After that call, I forwarded Stephen's contact information to my sister. When I told her what he had said, she sighed. Don't confront Sandra, she advised. It's not worth it. Let the legal process do what it needs to do. Adding more emotional confrontations will just make things messy. She wasn't wrong. But that didn't make it any easier. 2 days later, Sandra emailed me. A long, winding message defending herself, insisting that nothing serious had happened, that I was overreacting, that I was throwing away our marriage over a single mistake. I didn't respond. Then, unexpectedly, she accepted the divorce terms my lawyer had proposed, the same one she had fought against for weeks. No arguments, no counteroffers, just a simple acceptance of our agreed division of assets. The speed of her acceptance after so much resistance made my gut twist. Something had changed. Something had made her back down. My sister had a theory. She knows Stephen talked to you, she said, and she probably realized that if this goes to court, more details could emerge during contested proceedings. A month had passed, and the house was officially on the market. Within days, we had 2 offers above asking price. It was a strange feeling, knowing that soon, the place Sandra and I had built together would belong to someone else. We had agreed to split the proceeds evenly after paying off the mortgage, a final division of the life we had shared. Sandra came by the apartment again, this time with her mother. They brought boxes and started packing up the household items we had agreed she could take. I kept my distance, offering help only when necessary. Her mother, however, wasn't content with silence. You know, she started as I handed her a box from the kitchen. Marriage isn't always easy. It takes work, patience. I simply nodded, setting another box near the door. She pressed on. After Sandra was born, her father and I nearly separated. His long work hours, my suspicions. It almost tore us apart. She let out a heavy sigh, as if reliving the memory. But I'm so glad we worked through our problems instead of giving up. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That I admired their perseverance? That I wish things had gone differently? None of it mattered now. I carried the last of the boxes out to their car, careful to keep my words neutral, polite. As they were about to leave, Sandra hesitated. Can I talk to you alone? She asked, glancing at her mother. Her mother seemed reluctant, giving Sandra a searching look before finally walking to the car. I watched as she climbed into the passenger seat, stealing glances at us through the windshield. Once we were alone, Sandra's demeanor shifted. The composed, almost detached version of her I had seen these past few weeks seemed to fade. She looked hesitant, even somber. I need to clear my conscience, she said quietly. There are things I haven't been honest about. I crossed my arms, bracing myself. Go on. She took a deep breath. I lied about why you couldn't come to the reunion. And I spent more time with Stephen than I let on. I clenched my jaw. I already know that. I know, she admitted. But I need you to hear it from me. She swallowed hard before continuing. We didn't sleep together. I swear. But we did kiss. After the farewell dinner, when we'd both been drinking. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Right. I stopped it, she added quickly. The second it happened, I regretted it. I looked at her, trying to gauge her sincerity. Then why did Stephen tell Jamie you two hooked up? Sandra sighed. Maybe to save face. Maybe, to him, a kiss counted as hooking up. I don't know. I let that sit between us for a moment before asking the question that had been gnawing at me. And the texts? She looked down. I deleted them before the reunion. Of course, she had. They were just reminiscing, she explained. Conversations about the past. But I knew if you saw them, it would hurt you. And I didn't want that. I let out a bitter laugh. So instead, you made sure I never saw them at all. She didn't respond right away. The cab incident, that was innocent. We went to get something from his car, and we ended up talking. He was going through his divorce, feeling like a failure. That's all it was. I rubbed my temples, trying to process everything. Why are you telling me this now? Sandra hesitated before answering. Because the divorce is happening, no matter what. And I want you to know the truth. I need to clear my conscience, she said, her voice quieter than usual. I lied about why you couldn't come to the reunion. And I spent more time with Stephen than I let on. I clenched my jaw, staying silent. I wanted her to keep talking. I scoffed. So, what? You're saying you were only a little unfaithful? I know it sounds bad, she murmured. And maybe it is. But I never doubted us before the reunion. Whatever Stephen told you, maybe he misunderstood. I never said I had doubts about our marriage. I was just nervous about having kids. I shook my head, my frustration mounting. That's convenient. Every time a new truth comes out, it just happens to contradict whatever someone else told me. Sandra let out a sigh and reached into her purse. She pulled out an envelope and held it out to me. I bought these before the reunion. It was supposed to be a surprise for our anniversary. I took the envelope but didn't open it. What is it? Concert tickets. For that band we both love, she said, her voice soft. I know you probably don't want to use them with me, but I thought you might want them anyway. I stared at the envelope in my hands, my mind a mess of emotions. Finally, I just nodded and tucked it into my pocket. Thanks. She looked at me for a long moment, then exhaled. I should go. I didn't stop her. I watched as she walked back to the car, her mother giving me one last searching look before they drove away. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a message. From Stephen. Sandra asked me to text you. Just wanted to say again that we didn't sleep together. We only kissed. I was drunk when I told Jamie something happened, and I exaggerated. I'm sorry for my part in all of this. I won't contact either of you again. I stared at the screen. Their stories matched now. For a second, I almost wanted to believe them. But then I thought about all the lies before. All the contradictions. And even if they were finally telling the truth now, it didn't change the core betrayal. The trust was already broken. The next morning, I got a text from Andrew. Check your messages when you have a second. I opened the screenshots he sent. It was a conversation between him and Sandra. Heated, full of anger. You ruined my marriage, Andrew, Sandra had written. You had no right to text Charles. You completely misinterpreted what was happening. I scrolled down, reading his response. Andrew didn't back down. I told you the truth, Charles. And I stand by every word. Others at the reunion noticed, too. They just didn't want to get involved. Who? I asked, gripping the phone tighter. I'm not naming names, but more than one person mentioned how close Sandra and Steven seemed all weekend. You weren't there, so you didn't see how often they slipped away together. Like that night at the bonfire. They disappeared for over an hour. People noticed. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. So she lied about that, too. She admitted to reminiscing with him, Andrew said. But in her messages to me, she acted like I was twisting things. She tried to play it off as harmless inside jokes and innocent flirting. Flirting isn't harmless when you're married, I muttered. Exactly. She still won't own up to everything, Charles. You're right to be done with this. I thanked Andrew for telling me and ended the call. Even if I ignored what Sandra and Steven did that weekend, the endless stream of half-truths and carefully timed confessions had shattered any trust one had left. Every time I uncovered a lie, she had a slightly adjusted version of events waiting, just enough truth to seem credible, but never the whole story. The kiss was only acknowledged after Steven spilled it. The deleted messages only came up when she thought I had proof. And now, the long, private moments at the reunion were merely misunderstood by others. There was nothing left to salvage. I threw myself into building my new life. I finally bought furniture for my apartment instead of making do with the few pieces I'd grabbed from our house in a rush. My sister's husband introduced me to a friend who needed help renovating his basement, giving me something to focus on in the evenings and weekends. Physical labor, the feeling of working with my hands, helped clear my mind in a way I hadn't expected. Sandra had mostly stopped reaching out, but I heard from mutual friends that she was painting herself as the regretful wife who had made a single mistake, while I was the bitter, unforgiving husband. She told people my stubbornness, not her choices, was the real reason our marriage had ended. Some believed her. Others didn't. I stopped caring either way. The people who mattered to me knew the truth. Those who didn't weren't part of my future. The divorce would be final in the coming months. 2 days before our divorce was to become official, I received an email from Sandra. The subject line read, "The whole truth." I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. Opening it, I braced myself. Sandra finally admitted that she and Steven had indeed slept together during the reunion, not just once, but twice. She claimed she had fought the divorce so hard at the start because she couldn't face admitting the full truth, even to herself. According to her, Steven had reached out to her a month before the reunion, and they had been communicating regularly. When she learned he was attending, she deliberately created the story about spouses not being welcome. Their first night together had been planned in advance, not a spontaneous decision influenced by alcohol, as she had previously suggested. She had arranged to meet him at his cabin after the welcome dinner, claiming to others that she needed to make a work call. Their second encounter occurred after the farewell dinner when most attendees were distracted by group activities. She expressed regret, not just for the betrayal, but also for how she had tried to paint me as unreasonable to our friends for wanting a divorce. She acknowledged manipulating the situation, admitting only to parts of the truth when confronted with evidence. She ended by saying she wasn't asking for forgiveness, only wanting to stop living with the lies. I sat back, staring at the screen. I should have been angry, maybe even vindicated. Instead, I felt tired, just exhausted. I had suspected this all along. All she had done now was confirm what I already knew. Without a word, I forwarded the email to my sister. She called me immediately. "Charles," she said, her voice cautious. "I just read it. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. "I think I always knew." She exhaled, then asked, "Do you want to use this in the divorce proceedings? It changes things." "No." My response was immediate. "The terms are fair. I just want it done." There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then, she said, "I get it." And she did. More than anyone, my sister understood that this wasn't about revenge. It was about moving forward. The email was filed away in my records, but I saw no benefit in using it to punish Sandra further. I didn't respond to her email. There was nothing left to say. The next day, after the divorce was finalized, my phone rang again. This time, it was Sandra's sister. We had always gotten along well at family gatherings, but it had been months since we'd last spoken. "Hey, Charles," she said hesitantly. "Hey," I replied, waiting. She sighed. I wanted to call you because I found out about Sandra's email. She told our parents everything." I said nothing, letting her continue. "They're mortified," she admitted. "And I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. For how my family pressured you to reconcile." Sandra's sister's voice was filled with regret as she spoke over the phone. "I just wanted to call and say, I'm really sorry, Charles. We all are." I exhaled, resting the phone against my ear as I stared out my apartment window. You don't have to apologize. You were just supporting your sister. That's what family does. I know, but we also pushed you in ways we shouldn't have, she admitted. Mom and Dad, especially Dad, feel awful about how they handled everything. If we had known the full truth. She trailed off, as if weighing whether to say more. They don't blame you. For anything. I nodded to myself. I appreciate that. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a while, absorbing the conversation. It didn't change anything, but it was nice to hear. 2 days later, another email from Sandra landed in my inbox. Subject, one last time. She had found a few of my things while packing up the house and wanted to return them in person. I hesitated before agreeing, keeping the meeting casual and neutral. Sandra arrived 10 minutes late, stepping into the cafe with a small box in her hands. She looked different. Her hair was cut short, and she was thinner than I remembered. The sight of her stirred nothing in me. Hey, she greeted softly, setting the box on the table. Sorry I'm late. It's fine, I said, taking the box. Inside, I found my grandfather's old watch, long thought lost. I picked it up, turning it over in my hand. I thought this was gone forever. Sandra swallowed hard. You accused me of misplacing it during cleaning. I actually found it back then, but hid it during one of our arguments. Then I forgot about it until I was packing. I closed my fingers around the watch, not bothering to respond. There was nothing left to say. She pointed to some photographs at the bottom of the box. These got mixed in with my stuff. I figured you'd want them back. I nodded, slipping the items into my bag. We sat in silence for a while, sipping our coffee. Eventually, she broke the quiet. Thank you, she said hesitantly, for not using my email against me in the divorce. You could have. I met her gaze. It wouldn't have benefited either of us. She gave a small, sad smile. I've been going to therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did. I didn't respond. It wasn't my responsibility to help her make sense of her choices. As we prepared to leave, Sandra hesitated. Would you ever consider staying in touch? As friends? I shook my head gently. I think a clean break is healthier for both of us. She nodded, not pushing further. We walked outside together, then parted ways without ceremony. And just like that, it was over. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.